The prophet Elijah walked the dusty roads of Israel like a contained storm, his mantle over his shoulders and the fire of God burning in his eyes. His name was already legend among the people. He had stopped the rain with a single word and brought it back 3 years later. He had challenged 400 prophets of Baal atop Mount Carmel, and fire from heaven had fallen on his water-soaked altar, consuming everything before an astonished nation. He had fled to the desert when Queen Jezebel swore to kill him. And there, exhausted, he heard the voice of God, not in the wind nor the fire, but in a still, small voice. Now, in his final days on earth, Elijah knew something no one else knew. His time in this world was about to end in a way no other prophet had ever experienced. Beside him walked Elisha, his faithful disciple, the man who had left his oxen and plow to follow him without looking back, the one who already carried the mark of a divine calling. The sons of the prophets whispered among themselves a truth hard to believe. Today, the Lord would take Elijah away from Elisha. Elijah stopped before Elisha in Gilgal and said, "Stay here, for the Lord has sent me to Bethel." Elisha answered, "As the Lord lives, I will not leave you." They went down to Bethel, and the sons of the prophets came out to meet Elisha with a question like a warning. "Do you know that today the Lord will take your master from over you?" Elisha answered quietly, "Yes, I know. Be silent." He already felt in his chest the weight of a farewell no one had ever witnessed before. Elijah insisted again, "Stay here. The Lord has sent me to Jericho." Once more Elisha refused, bound to his master by a bond death itself seemed unable to break. In Jericho, the sons of the prophets repeated the same whispered warning. "Do you know that today the Lord will take your master from over you?" Elisha answered again, "Yes, I know. Be silent." Each time he heard these words, he felt the time with his master running out like sand through his fingers. For the third time, Elijah said, "Stay here. The Lord has sent me to the Jordan." And for the third time, Elisha answered, "I will not leave you, whatever it costs me." 50 men from the sons of the prophets followed at a distance, stopping before the Jordan River, aware they were about to witness something they would never see again. The Jordan ran wide before them, a barrier soon to be broken by an act of divine power. Elijah took his mantle, folded it in his weathered hands, and struck the waters with a gesture carrying all the authority of heaven. The waters parted to one side and the other, opening a dry path, just as they had centuries before when Joshua crossed that same river. Elijah and Elisha crossed on dry ground, with the 50 prophets watching from the far bank, witnesses to a miracle reserved for that day. On the other side, Elijah asked Elisha, "Ask what I shall do for you before I am taken from you." Elisha did not hesitate. "I ask that a double portion of your spirit be upon me, a request far beyond riches or earthly power." Elijah looked at him and said, "You have asked a hard thing, yet if you see me when I am taken from you, it shall be so for you." The air grew heavy with an invisible tension, as if heaven itself held its breath, waiting for the exact moment. They walked on, talking, when suddenly the world seemed to stop. A chariot of fire with horses of fire separated the two men from each other. The chariot was not of this world, forged from flames that did not consume, yet lit the whole landscape with a golden supernatural glow. The horses neighed with a force that shook the ground beneath their hooves, their manes burning like living torches, their eyes glowing with a light belonging to no earthly creature. And before Elisha's astonished eyes, Elijah went up into heaven in a whirlwind, wrapped in light and fire, beyond the clouds, beyond human sight, beyond all explanation. Elisha cried out, my father, the chariot of Israel and its horsemen." His voice broke between reverence and grief, and he saw him no more. For Elijah vanished into the whirlwind of fire, swallowed by the light, lifted toward a destiny no human eye could follow. Elisha took hold of his own clothes and tore them in two, a traditional gesture of deep mourning, the physical expression of a grief that fit no words. On the ground where Elijah had stood lay his mantle, fallen like a feather after the bird that carried it had vanished, an object now carrying immense spiritual weight. Elisha picked it up with trembling hands, knowing that piece of cloth was not merely a memento, but visible proof that the double portion of the Spirit had been granted to him. He returned to the bank of the Jordan, the same river he had crossed moments before beside Elijah, now alone, carrying a responsibility he had never imagined bearing. He struck the waters with Elijah's mantle and asked aloud, "Where is the Lord, the God of Elijah?" The waters parted once again. The 50 sons of the prophets, watching from Jericho, saw the miracle repeat before their eyes and knew at once that Elijah's spirit now rested upon Elisha. They bowed before him to the ground, recognizing the new mantle of authority that had fallen upon the once faithful servant of the great prophet. But their devotion did not extinguish their curiosity, and soon an idea spread among them like fire in dry grass. Perhaps Elijah had not vanished completely. They proposed to Elisha, "There are with your servants 50 strong men. Let them go and search for your master. Perhaps the Spirit of the Lord left him on some mountain or valley." Elisha, who had witnessed the ascension with his own eyes, answered calmly, "Do not send them." He knew searching would be useless, but they insisted so persistently that Elisha finally gave in, allowing them to send a search party to ease their doubts. 50 strong men set out toward mountains and valleys, searching every cave and ravine where a body might have fallen after such a violent whirlwind. For 3 days, they scoured the region, asking shepherds and travelers if they had seen anything fall from the sky in flames. They found absolutely nothing. No body, no burned clothing, no trace at all, as though the earth itself refused to keep evidence of what had happened. They returned to Jericho exhausted, forced finally to accept what Elisha already knew. Elijah was gone, and not in a way men could trace. Elisha told them, "Did I not tell you not to go?" His words carried no reproach, only the calm of one who already knew the truth. News of Elijah's disappearance spread throughout Israel like an echo that never faded, told from generation to generation as one of the most astonishing stories in Scripture. Unlike other prophets and kings, whose deaths were recorded with known tombs and buried bodies, no physical trace of Elijah was ever found, no tomb, no bones, no ashes. Centuries later, the sages of Israel would still debate what exact place in heaven had received the prophet who never tasted death. Jewish tradition would come to associate Elijah's return with the coming of the day of the Lord, prophesying that the one who ascended without dying would return before a time of judgment and restoration. At the Jewish Passover, an empty chair and an untouched cup of wine would be set aside, reserved symbolically for Elijah in case he chose to return that very night. Whole generations would grow up hearing that Elijah could appear disguised as a beggar or traveler, secretly helping those in need, because a man who never died could well still be walking among the living. In the New Testament, centuries later, Elijah's figure would reappear in a striking way atop a mountain, alongside Moses, speaking with Jesus of Nazareth during the event known as the Transfiguration. The disciples who witnessed that scene, Peter, James, and John, saw with their own eyes a man who, according to all tradition, had never tasted death, standing beside another who had died centuries before. This appearance deepened the mystery further. If Elijah was there, in body or in spirit, what did that whirlwind of fire that took him from the Jordan so many centuries earlier truly mean? Some scholars have noted that Elijah shares with Enoch the strange privilege of being the only 2 men in all of Scripture taken by God without passing through physical death. Both walked faithfully before the Lord, both vanished from human sight under supernatural circumstances, and neither has a known tomb or resting place on earth. This coincidence has led theologians across the ages to wonder whether these two men represent a special category within the divine plan, perhaps reserved for a purpose not yet fully revealed. The book of Revelation, written many centuries later, describes two mysterious witnesses who will prophesy in the last days, and many have speculated these witnesses could be Elijah and Enoch, finally returning to earth. Though the text does not confirm this with explicit names, tradition and theological speculation have kept this connection alive for nearly 2,000 years, feeding the mystery rather than resolving it. What did Elisha truly feel watching his master rise, wrapped in fire? The text only describes his cry, without capturing the inner magnitude of that moment. Let us imagine the silence that followed that cry, the echo of fiery hooves fading away, the golden smoke dissipating slowly, and a man standing alone, holding a fallen mantle. That mantle would become the most powerful symbol in the entire narrative, a tangible object proving something real had happened, even though the body would never be seen again. Elisha would carry that mantle for the rest of his ministry, performing miracles that would equal and in some respects surpass those of his master. But none of those future miracles could overshadow the original mystery, the disappearance of a living man, snatched away without a trace, without a tomb, without a body, without any possible explanation. Skeptics throughout the ages have tried to offer natural explanations: a sudden lightning strike, a violent storm, a collective hallucination born from the anticipated grief of the witnesses present that day. Yet none of these explanations account for the narrative precision of the account, nor for the persistence with which tradition has upheld its literal reality for millennia. What remains undeniable is the cultural and spiritual impact this story has had. A prophet who defied kings and called down fire from heaven, finally carried away by that same fire toward an unknown destiny. The question that has haunted readers for generations remains the same one that tormented those 50 men who searched for 3 days. Where exactly did Elijah go when the whirlwind engulfed him completely? Was he taken to a third heaven, as some apocryphal texts suggest? Was he transformed into a being incapable of dying, or was he simply relocated to another place on earth? The Bible, with its characteristic economy of words, offers no detailed answers, leaving the event wrapped in the same cloud of mystery that enveloped Elijah at the exact moment of his departure. This deliberate ambiguity has made Elijah's story one of the most debated, reinterpreted, and revered in the entire Old Testament. Every generation of believers has found in this account a different reason for awe. Some see the validation of God's power over death itself. Others see a promise of life beyond this earthly existence. Medieval Jewish scholars wrote extensive commentaries trying to decipher the exact meaning of the Hebrew term translated as whirlwind, searching for linguistic clues about the nature of the phenomenon. The early church fathers, for their part, saw in Elijah's ascension a symbolic prefiguration of the resurrection and ascension of Jesus Christ, establishing parallels still alive in theology today. And so, an event that happened thousands of years ago, narrated in just a handful of verses, has generated centuries of reflection, art, and theological debate, without its central mystery ever being fully resolved. Let us return to the bank of the Jordan, to the precise instant Elisha stood alone, mantle in hand, the sky still glowing with the trail of the fiery chariot fading away. That moment marked the end of one era and the beginning of another. Elijah's ministry, marked by fire, judgment, and direct confrontation with idolatrous kings, gave way to Elisha's ministry, Elisha would become known for miracles of healing, provision, and restoration, a notable contrast to his master's destructive fire, as if the spirit received had subtly transformed into a different expression of divine power. But even with all his own miracles, Elisha would never forget that instant beside the Jordan, the cry that escaped his throat, and the unforgettable image of his master vanishing into fire and golden clouds. The prophets who came after would continue to mention Elijah as an obligatory reference of faithfulness and power, an almost impossible standard, precisely because his ending had been as extraordinary as his entire life. Kings who ruled after his disappearance would still feel the weight of his memory, fearing that at any moment the prophet who never died might return to pronounce judgment on their own sins. Elijah's name would become synonymous with divine warning, invoked in moments of national crisis, remembered every time a prophet rose to challenge the corruption of those in power. And even today, thousands of years later, the question persists with the same force. What exactly was that chariot of fire? A celestial manifestation, or something beyond all human categories of understanding? Some modern researchers, fascinated by possible connections between biblical accounts and unexplained phenomena, have pointed to parallels between this description and other ancient accounts of lights and celestial wheels. Without entering speculation, the scripture does not support directly. It remains undeniable that the original description, with its fiery horses and ascending whirlwind, is still one of the most vivid images in the entire Bible. Returning to the central question that gives this story its title, why does the Bible affirm that Elijah never died, and why was his body never found, not even after 3 days of exhaustive searching? The most honest answer is that the sacred text does not aim to satisfy human curiosity with scientific explanations, but points towards something greater, God's power to transcend the limits governing mortal existence. Elijah became, through this incomparable ending, an eternal symbol of the possibility that the relationship between a faithful man and his Creator can go beyond what death normally demands. His story reminds us that Scripture contains moments deliberately defying our need for complete explanations, leaving room for reverence, mystery, and genuine faith before what we cannot fully understand. 50 men searched for 3 days and found nothing, and that absence of an answer has become, paradoxically, one of the most powerful affirmations in the entire biblical narrative about divine power. Because sometimes what the Bible chooses not to explain says as much as what it does explain, and the silence surrounding Elijah's final fate still echoes, generation after generation, as an open question toward heaven. And so ends, or rather continues without a defined ending, the story of the prophet who defied an empire of idolatry, called down fire from heaven before astonished crowds, and was finally carried away by that same fire toward a destiny no human eye ever witnessed again.